So this week, two Just Stop Oil activists smashed the protective glass on Velázquez, the Rokeby Venus. Now, this painting has an interesting political history. It was famously slashed by one of the suffragettes. Tom, do you think it's fair to put Just Stop Oil in the same bracket as the great heroes of democracy and women's rights?
No. Won't surprise anyone. But people have been doing this for quite a long time, actually, because this is the first time they've tried to make the connection so explicitly themselves. They even kind of, after they smashed it, they give their little speech where they talk about all the usual stuff about how...
Deeds, not words.
Yeah, exactly. They reference the Pankhurst and so on. And it's just, you think, God, the level of narcissism, it's almost offensive. Like if you think that you're standing on these people's shoulders in the way that they seem to think so. But there's a lot of people even on the kind of left who've suggested that, because they're also engaged in direct action as the suffragettes were, that therefore they're on some sort of moral par with them. The point is, what are you engaged with direct action to do? Are you there to enfranchise more than 50% of the population who were completely shut out of politics and public life, a campaign which was not only incredibly liberal and progressive, but also commanded obviously a huge amount of public support, given the fact that women were shut out from politics at that particular time? Or are you backing this sort of juvenile, attention-seeking campaign to try and impoverish the population by ushering in incredibly... There are universes apart. But I think... just because you're both engaged in similar tactics and even attacking the same painting, as the case might be, the idea that they're on some sort of moral par is absolutely ridiculous. But I think this is the problem, is that that's part of the reasons that I think a lot of these Just Stop Oil people are almost impervious to the criticism and to the pushback they get from members of the public and all the scientists, because they really do think they're on the side of the angels. So it's very difficult to detach them from that particular understanding. But yeah, it's borderline offensive for them to even make that connection, I think.
And James, I mean, a lot of the sort of stunts that Just Stop Oil are pulling recently are almost quite difficult to get your head around. I mean, it's not just, attacking the National Gallery, it's attacking the snooker, or you can get, when they stop traffic, it's annoying, but at least you can understand the connection. I see they're driving, they're using oil, and we're going to put a stop to it. But I think people are just baffled by a lot of this.
The snooker one was actually the final straw for me, because there is no more innocent a pleasure in life than snooker, and so I could not wrap my head around it. I mean, I actually wrote an article recently kind of looking at the morality aspect, but also the legality aspect, because what we're seeing increasingly, we've seen this from Thunberg, we've seen this from Indigo Rumbelow, I think her name is that they,
friend of the show.
They get in charge of the fences, and they're coming out and saying essentially, yes, I did the action in question, but actually I believe that I was doing it under necessity. I believe it was the right thing for me to do. And I did a bit of an expose looking at, because there is technically a criminal defence of necessity in this country. But the types of cases in which it was used was a case, for example, a number of years ago involving conjoined twins, in which the doctors had to basically separate them knowing that one would die, but if they didn't, both of them would die. That's the type of thing we're talking about, where you can use that defense of necessity. There is no way you could argue that the actions of these individuals falls within that remit, because you have to prove that it's proportionate, reasonable measures to try and stop death or serious bodily harm. Them arguing kind of in an abstract manner about climate change and the type of actions that they're doing, including things like lying in front of bloody ambulances, etc. I don't know how they could morally or legally justify that.
Yeah, the weather in 30 years will change somehow. Tom, anything final on Just Stop Oil?
No, one thing that I would say is interesting is that how, when they have made their way through the criminal justice system, what a kind of polite hearing they've often got. I mean, we've all seen the videos of the police giving them quite an easy time, saying, do you need anything? Do you want a cup of tea, glass of water, whatever? We're here if you need us. But also, that's one thing which has got less talked about, because obviously it's not filmed and can't go viral, but is the sort of thing that judges have been saying to them. There's like various instances of people saying openly, it's so nice to deal with people like you rather than the kind of scum I usually have to deal with. Didn't use exactly those words, but there's judges have said that. They've applauded them for their bravery, whilst actually sentencing them. This is a real problem that, again, you're kind of having politics creeping into what should be an impartial and kind of blind justice system. But again, going back to the sort of policing stuff that we've been talking about, there is a real problem with the fact that the state seems absolutely fine with certain incredibly disruptive protests, so long as they have some sort of moral sheen to them. It's the sort of thing your average Guardian reader would think would be a good idea. But if they're in any way controversial, then they will happily clamp down at them at will. And that's a real problem that we need to get a grip on. It's not a Suella Braverman fantasy that stuff is going on.
Yeah.
And I think people just feel like they're being gaslit when they're told over and over again it's outrageous to even point this out.
Definitely.